My name is Dana Caves. I'm a registered dietitian and I work at Smithville Medical Centre Family Health Team. I've partnered up with West Lincoln Public Library in Smithville to be able to answer the questions our community have about diet and nutrition. So today's question is, what are your tips for reducing sodium intake? Lots of our foods have sodium and we don't realize it. This is probably the biggest thing I see with patients is they think, okay, I don't cook with salt, so I'm not getting a lot of sodium in my diet. And the big thing that's usually pretty astonishing for them is that 75% or more of our daily intake of sodium comes from what's already built into our foods. So what I try to get patients to start looking at, and a great resource to check this out is on Health Canada, nutrition label reading. They've got a great resource to be able to check that out and learn how to read the labels. But the big thing that I, just show is usually in my office, I'd be going over labels that I've got on hand. So today I've got two different options to look at. I've got diced tomatoes that contain sodium. So you'll see on the label. So the big thing with the label is that it will show that you have, I'm trying to do this, there we go, half of a cup of this serving, okay? So you see what the serving size is at the top there. And when you scroll down, you'll see, you'll see there's a word there that says sodium. So sodium is another word for salt. And we know that if we get too much of this, it can raise our blood pressure and do damage to our arteries. So we want to be really careful about the amount of sodium that we're eating. So you'll see this one says it's got 250 milligrams for the half cup serving, or another way of looking at it is it has 11% of our daily intake of salt. So a good guideline to kind of use is that anything that's got 15% or more, it's considered it's got a lot. And so in the case of sodium, I would say that's too much and I'd want to put that product back on the shelf. Anything that has 5% or less is considered very little, and that would be a good thing to grab. Anything in between those 2 points are more like a caution, okay? What I would want patients to look for is to see if they can find a product for the similar serving size with less sodium in it. So maybe you can find one that, like this one, it's got 11%, and instead you could find one that's got only 7%, or even better, it's got 0%. So here's my example of exactly the same thing. So it's diced tomatoes, and you'll see again on the label for this one. So again, it's for a half cup serving, and you go down the label, and for sodium, it's got 5 milligrams, which that translates to, and as you can see across here, 1% of my daily intake of salt. And on the front of the label, it's pretty clear. It says there's been no salt added. So this would be a much healthier choice for me to use when I'm making something that requires diced tomatoes. So yeah, these are the big things that you want to look at on the labels. So pay attention, 15% or more is considered too much for the sodium. 5% or less is considered a great choice. The one thing I would caution though is that sometimes the label serving sizes aren't what you're actually eating. So if it said that the serving was half a cup, but you're eating 2 cups worth, well, in the case of this, I'd have to multiply this by 4, which would mean I'd be getting 44% of my day's intake of sodium right there. So that would be a lot. That'd be almost half my day's intake of salt for one item, which would be a considerable source. So the big sources in our diet, anything canned would be could be a contributor. Bread products are a big one. So you want to look at the serving that you're consuming and then what the milligrams or the percentage of sodium that it provides. And oftentimes I find with a lot of the bread products is if you can't find a good one, just try to choose this one's better than the other. So, if one said it had 10% for 2 slices and another one said it had 6% for 2 slices, it's still not 5% or less, but it's definitely a lot better than what it could have been. So the biggest sources of sodium can come from our prepared products, like I've mentioned, so the canned products, the bread products, but it also comes from eating things like fast foods or prepared foods. So if I buy the prepackaged frozen lasagna or chicken wings or frozen pizzas, or if I eat out, you'll see if you can see on the restaurant's website, you might be able to find a nutrition facts label to find out how much sodium you're getting. But it's pretty much a good assumption that whenever you eat out, regardless of whether you think you're choosing a healthier choice, it's going to have 3 to 4 times the amount of salt that you would have had if you were to make it at home by yourself. So I try to encourage patients to think about, can I bring my own lunches from home instead of stopping to buy my own lunch? That's a great way of reducing your sodium. Try to be mindful of the sauces and things like that, because prepared sauces typically can have a lot of salt. So choosing to make things by myself, if possible, that'd be a great idea. So one thing that we do in our house is, if I'm going to do a wrap, instead of using like a prepared salad dressing, just use like an olive oil and a vinaigrette, like balsamic vinegar or something like that, and you can flavor it. So like you could squirt like lemon juice in there, or you could put fresh herbs or things like that, or dried herbs, garlic, onions, things like that that give flavor to it without it being salt. That's adding flavor to our dishes. And the same concept applies for anything that we're cooking at home, is to use our herbs, our spices, things like that to flavor our foods without having to use sodium. Salt. The other one that people don't realize is things like bouillon. So like bouillon cubes. So in our community, I see the mahi is being used quite often. Tons and tons and tons of sodium in the mahi product that everybody seems to use for our soups and our stews. Tastes delicious, don't get me wrong, but the big thing is that it's giving you a lot of salt, which can raise your blood pressure and do damage to your arteries. So instead, use the flavors like I mentioned, like your herbs, your spices. Fresh herbs used at the end of cooking can give pow flavor. I top my dishes with things like, depends on what it is, but I might use some chives or some green onions or something like that on the top of the dish to give more pow flavor, instead of having to use salt in my cooking to give it more flavor. And then lastly, things that I would say to pay attention to would be deli meats. That's a big one I think a lot of people kind of miss. So deli meats, even if it says it's naturals on the product package, you'll check to see the sodium on that. So look at the label and pay attention to the label and look to see how much percentage it's giving you. And anything that's giving you 15% or more is a no, I'm going to put that back. 5% or less is the best. And then anything in the caution range, just try to choose a better option wherever possible. But this is where I try to encourage families, maybe I won't do a deli meat, maybe I'll do a canned no salt added tuna or salmon or something like that, which would be far healthier for you than say the processed deli meat. So I hope this has answered your question about ways to reduce sodium in your diet. Again, check out recipes online. Our great place to go check out recipes would be cookspiration.com, which is the Dietitians of Canada website. And another one is unlockfood.ca for multiple different ideas of how to make different recipes without using as much salt. And another good one would be the Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation. They've got lots of recipes on there too. Have a good day.